Okay, so when we've got our planning approval document through, the planning approval document will contain conditions, usually at least 3 conditions. What those conditions are is typically that the works have got to commence within a 3-year period, that there's a condition about materials to be submitted to the planners, or else they'll condition the materials specified, and the third one is always that the works are to be carried out in accordance with the plans. Some conditions will require you to do something, a discharge of condition, and that's a subsequent application. Some conditions are just a compliance condition that the contractor will do as part of the works, and these might be parking restrictions or hours of work and so on. Other conditions are tied to pre-commencement, so before you start you've got to do this, or else there's other conditions which are pre-occupation, so before the building can be actually occupied you've got to comply with that condition. So there's a few things to sort of be aware of, and your architects will obviously advise you of the process in what those conditions require. Moving on to building control, that's the next statutory consent. So of course we made a building control application for this project as well. Building control, they're not interested in how a project or a building appears really, or the planning, space, arrangement, appearance, any of that. That's all planning. Building control is about the technical performance of a project. And it's possible to have a project where you need planning and you don't need building control. It's also possible where you need building control and you don't need planning. This project required both, when we produce the technical designs, it will require things like the beam calculations. You can see there's some structural work going on behind. That's all being thought about in advance. We know what steel work needs to go in there. It's all being calculated by a structural engineer who we bring onto the team to work with us in making sure that the building is structurally sound and proving that to building control. Also, it will require things like a SAT calculation. A SAT calculation is all about what the building requires to keep the heat in and make sure it performs in a thermally efficient way. The building control covers all of the regulations required for the technical performance of the building, including sewage arrangements, drainage, ventilation, heating, thermal efficiency, right the way through to how you arrange the stairs and what height and depth the stair treads are. So it's a really comprehensive set of documents. The application itself covers 2 areas. There's before we start work, there's the plan approval, and you can go to the local authority or you can go to a private company for a plan approval process. They then check the calculations or check the drawings and specifications information, much the same way as the planning process happens, and then they'll come back to us with comments or an approval on the scheme. Sometimes they request additional pieces of information just to prove certain areas that haven't been fully clarified. Once that approval's in place, you've got enough information there to make a compliant construction. But the builder will need to know additional information. So they'll need to know things like what floor finish you want, what colour on the walls, where your sockets and switches are, and things like this that aren't really the concern of building control, but do have a cost implication. And so all of that gets wrapped up in the tender and specification stage before we go out to tender. And that's the next stage in the process.